All right. So, as mentioned, I have another special treat for you guys listening today, and those who are watching live. We got Jordan Woods Robinson as a guest on the TechMuze podcast today.
Hey, Dezz.
Yeah, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm having a great morning. It's been insanely productive, and everything's been back to back. So I'm really excited to have made it up to this point.
Glad to hear it. I'm doing all right myself. I had an avocado. I got my coffee in my I Love Dad mug that my daughter gave me, and I'm ready to talk shop with you here.
Awesome.
Before we get into it, for those of my listeners who aren't familiar with your name, give us this sort of 2-minute tour of who you are, what you're up to, and how your thoughts might be relevant to our discussion on the business of music.
Totally. Okay, so I'm Jordan Woods Robinson. I'm an actor and a musician. I like to just call myself an artist. Kind of encapsulates everything, though. But then I also consider myself an entrepreneur. And so I've been doing the music scene since I was 4, playing professionally in many different venues. And then acting, most recently, I'm in Blue Man Group and The Walking Dead. So I've gotten to see some really cool stuff there. But then probably the most pertainable thing why I'm here today is because I've started a company called SOS Studio. And we are helping independent musicians and songwriters get new music produced and to get it distributed. And we're just supporting each other, man. We're an online community of songwriters, and we're putting music on iTunes and Amazon and Spotify and everywhere where your audience is. We're engaging each other on forums and through courses in order to teach each other and share resources and tools that we found, and just encouraging experiences. And then we've also got this, what we're calling an online recording studio, where anyone can upload a scratch track of a song that they've written. And we've got a network of musicians who are around the world who have professional home recording studios. And so you can get live professional tracks added to your scratch track, and then we have mixers who put it all together and send it back to you. So the goal is to bring the power and the tools that independent artists and songwriters need to be able to, get yourself noticed and to continue to build and engage your audience.
That sounds extremely cool. In fact, I've been checking it out. You didn't launch too long ago, I noticed.
Yeah.
When did you launch that project?
It's been about 6 weeks now, I think. We've been doing this privately for about 3 years, just a select group of people. But we just went public about 6 weeks ago, and just opening it up to anyone who wants to join, and anyone who wants to, anyone who's looking for the support group and the mastermind group of just having other like-minded individuals around you. But also we're charging money. So it's that little kick in the pants of saying, no, it's time to get off your butt, and it's time to do this because you've been wanting to do it for a while, and it's time to stop being a hobbyist and to go into a business.
Yes.
Booyah. All back around.
How's that for a segue, eh? I love it. Well, I actually have a few questions about that I want to get into in a little bit.
Yep.
And something, of course, that we can't wrap up our conversation without at least touching on is your participation in The Walking Dead, because I'm a huge fan.
Of course. Okay.
Although that won't be the focus of today's chit chat. So just to sort of set the scene, like you nicely did there, what I want to really get into with you today is sort of the idea of shifting from the hobbyist mindset into the business or the entrepreneur mindset. And I know that that's something you spend a lot of time not just thinking about, but experimenting with and chatting about with other folks as well, with your podcast. So I guess where it all begins is actually making a shift in your mind. From, hey, I love playing music. I play jamming with my band. I love playing gigs and this and that. But at a certain point in time, if you choose to, you have to sort of make a mindset shift from, okay, this is something that I love to do, to I am an entrepreneur and this is a business. And that requires a whole different set of considerations.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've seen it happen in a couple different ways. And there's some people who say, I'm going to make this leap, and I'm going to do so by quitting all of my existing jobs and by putting away that structure that I've built in a part of my life that I don't really care about anymore, and rebuilding a new structure in the part of my life that I really feel very passionately about. And that's a huge commitment, man. It's a huge leap of faith. But you're going to see results whether you like to or not, because that's your only option at that point.
Indeed.
Like you have to succeed, or else you're going to go back to your business or go back to your old job, which wasn't as fulfilling. So I've seen a lot of people doing that, and it's a struggle. And actually, there's a podcast that I'm listening to right now that I love. And if you don't mind, I'll
please.
I know it's on your podcast too, but there's a guy, his name is Brandon Barnett. and he's
Okay.
got a podcast called Left of Nashville. And he did
Ah,
this. He's have you heard of it?
yes. In fact, I heard of it from your show
Oh my gosh,
when
dude.
you played with one of his episodes as your episode. I thought that was fantastic, and
Yeah.
I chimed in, and I've listened to every single one.
I love it. He's a guy that he hit 40, and he had built a company that for whatever reason had, you'll hear from the podcast, it went under, and so he basically stepped off the ledge without any safety net, and
Hmm.
he's just, now the podcast is chronicling all the steps that he's going through in order to make it, and it's
Yes.
really exciting, but it's also just it grabs at your heartstrings and just makes you really root for the guy.
That's true.
But I don't think you have to do that. I think part of it is just, I haven't done that. I'm a performer. I'm an actor and a musician, like I said, and I'm the majority of my income is coming from my jobs. But then, my passion right now, I should be careful with my words. My passion is still performing, and my passion is the jobs that I'm working on. But then I've got SOS Studio, and I'm not about to quit everything I'm doing in order to put all of my time and money into SOS Studio. So it's, each person to themselves. But yeah, I think it is a mindset thing. I think it's about just acknowledging that you are the artist, you are the business,
Yes.
and the branding is you. So once you start realizing that you're the only person who can reach those goals, you're the only person who can do what you want to do, there'll be other people along the path who can help you, who will have skill sets that you don't have that complement what you can do, and who can, like for a website designer, or for a studio drummer playing on your tracks, or whatever the case may be, you can reach out to other people, but you're steering the ship. And
Indeed. Yeah.
and if you don't take responsibility over that, then nothing's gonna happen.
No.
You have to, but it's just a mindset. You just have to acknowledge it, and then after that, answers, once you realize that the answer is up to you, then it makes it a lot easier to decide when certain questions are put in front of you.
And there's it's sort of a two sides to the coin sort of scenario, because on the one hand, when one is in the employee mindset, then a lot of the decisions that pertain to the acquisition of business are being made for you, and then you're just in there providing a service or filling a role, right?
Right.
When you switch that mindset over to being an entrepreneur, then you now have to consider all of the acquisition of business type of strategies. So, for example, if you run or if you work at a retail store, which I recently did, the person who owns that shop is taking care of, like you mentioned, branding, the market strategies, bringing customers into the door, and it's your job to serve those customers. As soon as you become the owner of the shop, then you have to consider, how am I going to get the business in? How am I going to get my product or my service in front of a market of people that is going to be interested in what it is that I have to offer? And then how do I present my offer in such a way that's going to have the greatest level of impact? This marketing and business acquisition type of mindset. And I think that scares some people. On the one hand, it means you have a great deal of responsibility. There's nobody doing these things for you anymore. It's all up to you. Like you mentioned, you're driving the ship. Right. And on the other hand, it gives you great freedom. Because you have absolute control. If you choose to dedicate 1 year to a particular strategy that's going to bring more business in the following year, then you go ahead and you do that, and you have complete control. So there's a freedom aspect, but there's also a bit of a responsibility, which can be frightening to some people.
Absolutely. I just put together, I challenged myself and my listeners to come up with one word that your one word goal for 2016. And this isn't my idea. It was started by a number of other business people. The person that I could trace it back to most easily was Amy Porterfield, who is a social media genius. But so one word to describe what you're going to go forward with it in 2016 or any year with. But it doesn't have to be the whole year. It could be 3 months. Things peter out and things change as you uncover new things. But there's a brilliant mind, Chase Reeves, who I referenced in that podcast. He's with Fizzle.co, which is a site for entrepreneurs and building entrepreneurs. And what you're talking about, he explains as the CEO mode versus the worker bee mode. And in order to, we as one person armies, as business owners, we have to be able to step out and see the vast picture of CEO mode, of branding and marketing and goals that we want to achieve, not just next week, but in 6 months and a year and 5 years. We have to be able to put all that together and constantly be moving pieces around in order for it to add up the way we want to. But then you have to be able to, once you have that CEO mode, you have to be able to dissect all of those components, everything on the ladder that gets you to that final goal. You have to dissect it all back down to really small steps that you can go into worker bee mode, which is the employee mode.
Yes.
And you have to be able to knock those off so that day to day you're not overwhelmed with the giant picture.
Indeed.
Day to day you're breaking it down into really small actionable things that you can do that might not seem like much right now, but then each time is another notch in the belt that's going to keep building and growing up to that point where you've reached that final goal.
Yeah, it's sort of a reverse engineering type of mindset. Are you familiar with Shailene Johnson?
No.
She does a podcast. She's in the health and fitness industry, or at least that's how she started. And she does a podcast on business and mindset and so forth. And I just actually, before we started chit chatting, finished her most recent episode, and it was about the exact thing you're describing, which is. Cool. Which is the setting, which is the becoming aware of what the grand picture goals are, and then reverse engineering those goals until you end up with basically a day planner.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the 3 things you're going to do today, and it's already mapped out because you've spent that time on the front end. And then each day goes by, and before you know it, 2-3 months later, you've achieved these what seem like daunting, massive goals.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually undergoing a similar process right now because I'm just recently making the transition to full-time entrepreneur. The day job was actually getting in the way. There comes a point in time where there are only so many hours and something's got to give.
That's true.
And at that point, you have to make a decision. And so I'm actually going through some similar things right now with my business efforts and what have you. And you sit down sometimes and it's like, oh my God, I have this project in mind, but it seems so huge that I don't even want to start.
Yeah.
You know.
It's terrifying. And you know, I did something about that too, where it can be paralyzing, especially for an artist or a creative type who's like, I want to think big picture. I just want to create and live impulsively. And that's fine. That's completely great. But then in order to be your own boss, then you have to be able to add some structure. And I came up, I did another podcast. We're talking about podcasts. That's a podcast here.
That's okay.
But I did another one where it's just like figuring out what is the first step? What's the first thing that you have to do so that, it's not even like you're looking at big picture, and let's skip over all of the breaking it down into smaller chunks and blah, blah, blah. Let's just say, what is the very first thing that you have to do? And most of the time, it's going to come down to the simplest, most brainless task that you can imagine. And usually it's just going to be like calling someone or sending an email, you know, and it's just that little impetus of just opening the door and getting the process started, even at the most minuscule level.
Yeah.
That if you know where your goal is and you just throw that little pebble into the pond, it's going to ripple of its own volition. It's going to keep going because you've started it, and just from the simplest thing. It wasn't about like, I need to send an email because I need to get a sponsor for my new album or whatever. It was just reaching out to someone, and
there's a phrase that says little hinges swing big doors, and I think that qualifies to describe what you're saying. It's absolutely true. And in fact, I've noticed in my own experience that sometimes those little tiny efforts end up having of their own right a more impactful result than some of these larger projects that may be necessary,
Yeah. Because I mean, when you're not in the muck, you might be sitting down and like breaking down the steps, and you might forget about the natural things that are going to happen, the human components that are going to happen, where, if you just start something and just ride it through with your goal in mind, always taking just the next simplest step after the one you've already completed, then you're going to find those human moments that are like, oh, that's right, I wouldn't have accounted for this if it was just me and a notepad,
Absolutely. Indeed. So, okay. The other thing I wanted to get your opinion on is, okay, so let's assume that by this point, our listener who is perhaps deciding to move into the business side of music, right, has got an idea as to what they want to do. They're shifting their mindset. In my opinion, there's a couple core components to any business. The first is you have to have something to offer, that be a product or a service. As musicians, we typically have both. We have the service of our performance, and we have the product of our records and our merchandise, et cetera, right? But a product or a service is only as good as the number of people that you have that may be interested in such a thing. So
Right.
how do we find those people? And I guess this would be under the broad topic of purely marketing. Like, how do we find the market of people that might be interested in what we do and collect them into I guess a database that's going to allow us to communicate with them and turn them into a fan? You got thoughts on that?
Well, how to find them is a harder question than how to capture them, I think. Like how to find them involves, I'd say most of the people, your family, as a musician, as an artist, I think you can reach out to family, and most of the time they're going to want to support you in some way. But then after that, people who go to your performances, anyone who shows up to your live events, are going to be people who will want to support you in the future. And if you don't do live events, or if you don't have that many people, then you have to get into other questions of, do I reach out? Do I have to go to SoundCloud and put my stuff up there and try to engage people on there? Do I reach out to other bands and say, hey, where's your audience live? Can I maybe, put a guest post up on your, I don't know, we're getting into theories here, but the question is, how do you find them? And then how do you keep them? And I think how do you keep them is a newsletter.
Yes.
More and more people are saying this, and it's becoming more and more clear to me that until you reach a certain point as an independent artist, your newsletter is more important than revenue. Because your newsletter will equal revenue at a certain point. But until then, it's all about growing it and actually engaging with your fans and really, you said this when you were on my podcast. We said we get a little tally. You need to have like a little say the word podcast, and I bet we'll get up into the multiple dozens.
Yeah.
But when you're on mine, you were talking about like getting them from the digital world into the real world, and I think you said meat world, right? Didn't you?
Meat space, yeah. And vice versa. I believe that it's important to be able to maintain your conversation, quote unquote, with your audience, regardless of the medium, whether it's online or offline. I think that's really important, because the important thing is the communication, the conversation, the nurturing of the rapport and the relationship, which is what, in my opinion, moves somebody from being a casually interested party to a fan. And I think I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And one of the things that my theory on the defining moment of when someone turns into a super fan is when they move beyond being interested in your music and being a fan of your music and move into the area of being a fan of you as the artist. I believe that's when you really cross that threshold into super fan, which is also known as customer in my experience. It's the super fans that are where the revenue in the business comes from, typically speaking. Now you mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I've got another way of phrasing that, because I about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, I had one of those real, like, just uber self-doubt moments where everything was just not working out. Things were crashing, and I was considering stopping SOS Studio and like all these passions and things that I had. And in the back of my mind and logically, I knew that it was just a phase that I was going through, and that I would come out of it. And of course I would continue doing this, and that it was just something I had to work through. But it spawned this great philosophy that I'm going to share right now.
Okay, please do.
I think when you're sharing, I think the most important thing when you're sharing on social media or newsletter is to, of course, know who you're talking to, know who your audience is, and try to distill that down to one person, one person, and a real person, if you can, of like your ideal customer, your ideal person that you're going to be talking to. Is probably not going to be your mom. It's probably going to be someone who has always shown great support for your music or your band, but isn't related by blood. Someone who doesn't have any obligation to be showing support, yet they are. And so now every time you send anything out, you're speaking to that one person, knowing that if you can convince that one person that what you're saying is real, then it's going to automatically be relatable to everyone else that you're trying to reach, because they'll see the honesty in that, and they'll see the personal connection in that, and they'll want to be a part of it. So once you have that one person, you now need to know, I think there are two types of people, and this is what you're saying. I think there are people who support you financially and people who support you emotionally. And you're going to talk to them two different ways, because the person who's going to support you emotionally is someone who might be a super fan later, might be a customer later on, but they don't have the money right now, or they haven't been convinced yet. So right now, they're just there because they believe in what you're doing. They think you're a cool person. They like your music, but they're not about to go out and buy it. The second person is the person who's supporting you financially, who will throw down if you ask them for a challenge, or you offer them any service or whatever. They're going to open up their wallets and say, yes, I know this is the best way I can give back right now. I'd like to support you. And you're going to talk to them differently. And so now, anytime you go onto social media or your newsletter or to an email or just calling someone up, those are the two things that you need to assess. You need to know if you're talking to your emotional supporters or if you're talking to your financial supporters, and then how do you add value to their lives with this post. It's not about it's not about self-promotion. It's not about tooting your own horn. It's not about trying to sell something. It's about how do you add value to this person's life. And it's not, I can't try to sell an album to my emotional supporters because it's going to go over their head. It's not where they are in our relationship right now. It's not what they want to be doing. So that's going to be a failed tactic. But if I go out to my financial supporters and say, hey, I have this new album, can you, could you pre-order it or whatever, and I'll make sure that I get you all these bonuses, but I need to be paid. I need the money up front in order to make that happen. They're going to do that, And so I think those are the two things you need to think about: emotional versus financial supporters, and then how do you add value to their life? And I think if you can do that, I've been super aware of it lately. And I think if you can do that, you're going to reach that many more people in a meaningful way. And you're actually going to, they're both completely valid. They're your audience. You wouldn't be here without them. You'd be talking to an empty room or playing to an empty room. And they just have different ways of supporting you right now. But that's your audience. And you can't, if you just speak to your audience as a whole, then you're automatically avoiding or segregating half of them at any given time. So
and you begin to dilute the value that you can add if you don't have what I would describe as that customer avatar. It's often referred to in the business world, where who am I talking to? Who is the type of person that is interested in what I do? When I put all my fans together, the people that come to my shows, the people that respond to emails, etc. Who are they? And like you said, if you can narrow it down even to a specific person, and that allows you to keep your message in focus. And it also allows you, with that focus, to be able to attract other people who may not yet be aware of who you are, but are in that category of person, who will probably resonate with the content that you're putting out.
And that's a really good point. And do you mind if we're on Blab and people can ask questions, and someone just asked a good question? Do you mind if I read it?
Absolutely. In fact, that's my lovely lady Carol, I believe, who asked that question.
Hey there, lovely lady Carol. That makes sense, since the screen name involves your name as well. So the question is, as far as a newsletter, what is the difference between a newsletter and a blog, and what sorts of things would you suggest including? And do you mind if I take it first?
By all means, please.
Especially since you can probably just go offline and have a conversation with your lovely lady Carol.
I'm sure we will.
So I think they're two different things. I think they can be related. Here's the difference. Newsletter is going to be going directly to each of your audience's email addresses when you want it to. Whether or not they open it is a completely different thing. But you at least know that they've seen it and that they had the opportunity to read it if they wanted to. With social media, the numbers, by the way, like most recent, I think I heard like 6%. It's so drastically abysmal. Like 6% of your audience will actually see anything that you put up on social media at any given time, which is insane. So the newsletter is at least going out to 100% of the people who wanted to see it. And then after that, if they read it, fantastic. If not, fine. With the blog can be a part of your newsletter, and the blog is going to live on your website. And one great thing with that is it can be great in order to put out press about yourself or to add value to your website of, putting certain words in the blog that if someone is searching for a subject, then they find your take on it in written words that Google has analyzed and done all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, Jordan's talking about social media and newsletters, and you just happen to do a search that brought that up. Now, all of a sudden, you're on my website. You're engaging with the other pictures and videos and other blog posts and stuff that I've put up there. And now maybe I have the opportunity, without doing any extra work, I have the opportunity of you now subscribing to my newsletter and bringing you in. I think this is getting into a little bit of a funnel, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the idea is you set out, I think the blog is a part of a larger net that you put out in order to try to capture the people that you think are in your audience. What are the subjects, what are the problems that my potential audience is facing, and how can I help address that? And then you very strategically use certain words in order to go in there that will improve your searchability on Google. It sounds extremely daunting, and I am by no means an expert. I'm learning this one day at a time. But that's, if you talk to any actual expert, that's what they're going to say, SEO and searchability and all this other blah, 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 rigmarole. So that's the blog. So it's the larger net. And then the newsletter is where you really get to really highlight and specify what you want to show people. And sometimes it's just going to be as much as copying a blog post and sending it through and saying, hey, this is really awesome one. Why don't you read this? Sometimes it's going to be a personal email and being like, hey guys, I'm having I don't know, I'm having a hard time, and I've been thinking along this topic of what pushes us through, what pushes you over that hump as an artist, what keeps you going even when you're not getting any instant reward. And then you can engage your newsletter and say, they'll give you answers. You're reaching out to them on a human level and saying, I'm having this problem, is anyone else having this problem? And you can get into a dialogue, which will later maybe turn into a blog post or something that you can use in order to improve value for other people. It can also just be a personal look. It can say, hey, I'm about to start a new album, and when I do, I'm going to be sending out some pictures through my newsletter, so every once in a while I'll send out a little thing. It's just your way of, it's another way of bringing it from the online world into Meet Space, and having it just be that much more relatable to the people that you want to be interacting with, I think that's the main difference between a newsletter and a blog. The newsletter is more personal. The blog is more general. They're both still trying to add value, but the blog is just throwing stuff out into the universe and trying to grab, see what sticks. And the newsletter is, you've already gotten people to stick. So now how do you actually bring it,
go deeper?
Yeah, on an individual basis and on a personal basis. How can you all help each other?
Well, I think of it as, well said, by the way. I think of it as the difference being pushing and pulling, pushing versus pulling. With a blog, with the stuff that sits on the internet and exists for other people to discover, that's kind of pull marketing, being found in the search engines for what people are searching for, and then being drawn towards your content if it's relevant and well optimized, is going to pull people towards what it is that you do. And then, like you said, the idea is to encourage them to join your newsletter so that you can take the relationship to a slightly deeper level, which is the sole focus. The sole focus is to create connections, in my opinion. Feel free to debate me on a subject, but the sole purpose is to create connection with people, and to do it with as many people as possible, as deeply as possible, in ideally a manner that can scale, which is where the whole email newsletter thing comes in, because you can send that one email out and it can go to 10 people or 10,000 people. Right. And it's scalable as far as that goes.
Right. And like you're saying, it is circular too, because the more you reach out to your newsletter and learn about, your newsletter is going to tell you who your audience is. The people who are engaging with your website and wanting to learn more are going to subscribe. And then those people are going to continue to ask questions and blah, 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 and tell you what they like to read and what they don't. And then that's going to go back and inform the type of stuff that you put on your blog, because you're going to continue wanting to help the people in your newsletter. And that's your audience. And it's going to make it really clear for you that those are the people that you want to be reaching. And this doesn't, this is to translate this into just like personal musician or band stuff too. Like it's all still relatable. You don't have to have a business with a with a service like SOS Studio, you don't have to have that kind of service to offer. You can still do all these same steps as a band, but what you put on the blog is probably just going to be, it's probably still going to be more personal and more experiential based than it would be for a company who's trying to sell a product to someone,
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point, or you make me think of something in that a lot of regular businesses finding their market can be a little easier or more straightforward than a musician, because you sell a product that solves a problem. So you're just looking for the people that have that problem, and you show them what you have to offer to solve it. Whereas with as an artist, it's different. I mean, I create art. I have a personality. I have recordings, etc. But that's not necessarily solving a specific problem that I can go out and look for people who have. And so it becomes a bit more ambiguous. And so this is where I start to fall back on the whole relationship rapport building approach to marketing ourselves as artists, because that's really what it's all about. Yeah. In fact, I've talked about this a number of times, but Carol, who's still listening in, can attest that I'm a huge fan of Amanda Palmer. Yeah. And I believe you and I spoke a little bit about her on your podcast. And the interesting thing that I found as I stopped to consider it is that I'm not actually that big a fan of her music. She's got some good music, don't get me wrong. It's just not really 100% my cup of tea.
That's not what I know her for. I don't know her for her music. I know her for her movement in the independent artist scene.
And who she is as an artist and a human being. And I find it interesting. Also, I really enjoy watching her in her ability to do what we're describing here, which is create connections with people, both on and offline.
Sorry.
And I find... That's okay. You got a phone call coming in?
I can't even find my phone to turn it off. I have no idea where it is. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was me. That was my phone. All right.
No worries. So a little recap on where we're at so far. So we talked about, first of all, shifting your mindset from hobby to business and being able to take that big picture point of view on things and to be able to break them down into individual little tasks so that things don't feel that daunting. Mm-hmm. We discussed a little bit that, one of the first things you need to do is to have a product and a service, because that is what turns you into a business, having something to offer, and that you need to figure out a way to find people that might be interested in what it is you have to offer and to collect them into a system that allows you to develop that relationship, which is like this newsletter that you've been describing, right? Some ideas as far as finding your market. I mean, as an artist, like I say, you're not just looking for someone with a specific problem. You're just trying to create connections with people who may resonate with you as both an artist and the music that you create. Right. And so a lot of that is via social media, via your live performances. The important thing to consider is that wherever it is that you're interacting with people, whether on or offline, that you make an effort to capture their contact information so that you can then continue this rapport building process, and hopefully a fair percentage of those folks will turn into super fans, right? So that's attracting your audience and capturing that audience into a way that's going to allow you to provide value, which is the way you phrased it, which I'm happy that you did, because that's what it's all about. It's not really about selling stuff. Yep. It's about providing as much value to your audience as possible. And eventually a percentage of those people are going to want to show support, are going to be interested in your next offering, your next CD or record,
and so much to the point, Dezz, that I know a lot of musicians right now who are just giving their music away. Which is what that's what Amanda Palmer is known for. She basically gives her music away and then asks for donations, hoping that they come back, and they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we talked about this with streaming and other stuff. You're basically giving your music away for free online anyway. So if you can, I'd much rather give music away and get an email address of someone as payment in order to, continue a conversation, and maybe they'll want to support me later on down the line, than giving my music away for free anonymously through a streaming service and then having nothing to show for it,
Yeah, the way I always look at it these days, at the very least, is priority number one: find and create rapport and relationship, as we've been discussing. And then priority number two is to make sure that there are opportunities readily available for people to support you.
Yeah.
So whether that's having a store on your website where they can buy your albums and merchandise, or having a Patreon account where people can support you that way for the content that you're putting out. Yeah. These are all, as opposed to thinking of it as a sale, I like to think of it as these are opportunities for people to show their love and support should they choose to. And that's not up to me, that's up to them.
Right.
But my goal is to get as deep into this rapport and relationship with as many people as possible, for two reasons. One, that's going to turn customers out the other side, but two, that's an amazing thing that we can do as artists is to really, you know, make connections and touch people's lives. Yeah. In fact, Carol, who's still listening in the chat there, wrote a song not too long ago that was unfortunately inspired by some sad events. There was a member of our community who took his life, and it inspired a tune. And that song is probably the most impactful tune that we've come up with as the Dezz and Carol project, partly because of the intensity of the experience. Right. But I mean, it's a piece of music that really touched the people who could relate to what the lyrics are about and how it was presented musically. And that's a wonderful thing that we get to do as artists. Yeah. You know, if you're a burger flipper, you don't necessarily have as many opportunities to really touch people's lives in the same kind of way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting point to consider. Yeah. Another question I had for you is, so we've decided to become an entrepreneur. We've just figured out some ways to capture an audience. We've figured out how to get them into our system. But what are some different revenue streams that we can utilize apart from the obvious as musicians? I wonder if you have any thoughts on that. We talked about having albums and merchandise, but are there any other things that come to your mind in terms of potential revenue streams? Because I think you got to be diverse.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is one. I don't know if I have any definitive answers. I think the Patreon is great. I think just the option of Kickstarter is also really nice, but there are so many do's and don'ts that go into that I think it's a whole new art form in itself of finding the ways that you can. First of all, you have to have like a big goal. You can't just have it be steadily open, you know, like you can with Patreon, which people should go check out if you haven't heard of it. Patreon, right?
Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. and oh, you know, I'm a big fan of Bandcamp, especially with selling music, because the more I learn about it, the more powerful I realize it is. The main problem is that Bandcamp is not going to be as readily memorable as iTunes, you know, but it's a place. So if you're just talking to a layman or you know, a non-artist about, go to Bandcamp and buy my music, that's not gonna, you know, trigger the same memories as it would if you just say go to iTunes and search for my name.
That's right.
But Bandcamp has the way of giving albums away for free, first of all, so that and if you give something away for free, then you automatically collect their email address, which you can import into a it exports as a spreadsheet, and you can put it into your newsletter so that you can you can keep reaching out to them.
Quick question on that just before you continue. Are there any issues with opt-in? Like if I pull people from my Bandcamp database and put them into my email list, is there any potential issues of being a spammer because they didn't opt into that newsletter?
No, because in Bandcamp, it tells you right under where you put in your email address, it says flat out, it says your email address will be added to Jordan's newsletter, and you can unsubscribe at any time.
Oh, I did not know that. That's good to know.
So on a personal level, you're not doing anything weird. You're not, you know, you're not spamming them. However, if their spam filter or whatever happens to pick you up, then I mean,
that's something else.
There's nothing you can control about that, unfortunately.
Indeed.
Unless, I mean, if you want to go the extra mile, which would be great if you have time for it, you know, send them a personal email and say, hey, you know, I thank you so much for buying for downloading my album for free. I'm going to add you to my newsletter. In return, you know, we'll make a trade. I'm going to add you to my newsletter. So please check within the next 72 hours, check and make sure it goes through. If not, check your spam folder and then you know, remove it from spam or whatever you have to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And that would, you know, that's your first step in actually making a real conversation and dialogue with someone and showing that you're human and that you're thankful for them and that you're going to continue to grow this relationship, you know. But on top of that, the quality of the music that you can download through Bandcamp, you can get full WAV files rather than highly compressed MP3s. You can send little gifts to people through Bandcamp. You can, when they download your album, you can also download digital liner notes or a hand-drawn picture if you want to, other digital things that can all be included in the same package. And you can sell merchandise through Bandcamp. So if you have a CD that's related to, if you have the physical version of the CD to go along with the digital version, then you can sell it through there. And if someone buys the physical copy, the funds automatically go to your account. It sends them the physical copy, and then until it gets to them, they still have access to download all of the digital files as well.
So on that, do they provide the fulfillment of the digital or the physical copy, or do they just send you the notification and you have to fulfill the order?
I believe it's the latter. You don't send anything to them. Okay. It's not like CD Baby. They send you like a shipping address and say, hey, this person paid, and we told them that you would send it out within 3 days, something like that.
Okay, that's what I thought. That makes more sense.
Print off a mailing label and you put it in the mail. I have another, I don't know if you want to get into this. Do you want to get into like a physical distribution thing, a tool that I found?
Sure, please.
Okay. There's another service that I have not used. Disclaimer, I haven't used it personally, but it looks absolutely incredible. It's called Kunaki, KUNAKI.com. It's probably Swedish based off the spelling, I'm guessing. I'm kidding, it's Japanese. Kunaki.com. And it's the whole website makes it very clear that this is not a human-run organization. This is a machine. It is that's open 24/7. It will print and package and ship out a CD or a DVD within 24 hours to anyone. So you can either send in your order and get like 100 CDs to you that you can send out to people, or you can point your customers to a link that they pay for it, and then Kunaki just prints that one CD and sends it off directly from where they are, and it sends it to you automatically. So you don't have to. I forget what it's called. It's something, supply versus demand printing or something. It's like, we're not going to print 500
on demand.
Yeah, we're going to print one and we're going to send it off, and the prices are staggeringly low.
Well, that's what I'm interested in. Like, we use a service called CreateSpace, which is provided by Amazon, and it's very similar. You upload your music and your artwork and whatnot, and they have those files readily available. And if someone orders a physical copy, they manufacture it, shrink wrap it, and send it to the customer. They take their percentage and they send the rest to you via PayPal.
That's great.
And so it makes it so that it's something that can scale again. That's not a thing you have to put your attention to anymore as far as fulfillment and having inventory. Yeah.
CreateSpace. Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you happen to know? I know that do you want to go into the numbers on that? I think Kunaki is $1 per CD plus 5% for, I want to say 5% for the processing.
And do you set your own sale price?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a pretty similar service. I'm going to look into this Kunaki, and I imagine Carol already is, knowing her, because if the numbers are better, then hey, the numbers are better, right? Yeah. The value provided to the customer is the same, and if we can get the margins different, then hey, that's a good way to proceed.
Absolutely. Okay, so going back to it's createspace.com. Is that it?
I believe so. If you just Google CreateSpace as one word, it'll come up top of the pile.
Okay, got it. Okay, other forums for generating revenue. Yeah, man. I mean, I think Bandcamp is a pretty sweet deal. I haven't done anything with Patreon, and I don't know if I have much more. Do you have more after that? Services that you use?
I got a couple of ideas in terms of revenue streams in general, whether on or offline. Okay. Obviously, you've got your music itself, and so the channel of distribution could be different. It could be, like you say, Bandcamp as a digital channel, or physical, apparently, something like Kunaki or CreateSpace for physical channels. But the bottom line is the product is your music or your album, your collection of music. You've also got your merchandise. So if you've got T-shirts and this and that, and whatever random types of things you might get creative with, the physical merchandise with your branding on it. So that's more of a branding type of product.
Yeah.
But and then there's your standard gigs. Now, one thing to consider that I've learned is that if you're an artist who writes and performs original music, it can oftentimes be more difficult to get a paying gig, because most of the people that are hiring musicians are hiring people to entertain their patrons in their venue, whether that's a bar or a restaurant or what have you, right? And most of the time they want the tunes that people know and they're going to tap their foot and sing along to, and hey, I like this song, or let's order one more beer, right? This is the idea,
right?
And so if you play some obscure, alternative art rock or something that's original and no one knows, that might not serve the purpose that you're being hired for, and this becomes potentially an issue. Sure. So two things on that point. One is to consider, even if you are an artist who has music that's a little bit more on the obscure side or less relatable or what have you, is to consider putting together a couple of sets worth of music so that you can go out and do these jobs. That's a revenue stream that you can add to your business as a musician.
Yeah.
Another thing that Carol and I have been experimenting with and hope to do much, much more of is house concerts. And this is now, again, this is not going to be appropriate for everybody. If you're a 6-piece, death metal band, then playing in someone's kitchen might not work for you, but we play as an acoustic duo, so it's perfect for us. I know a lot of singer-songwriter type folks who this would be perfectly suitable for. And the nice thing about a house concert is a couple of things. One, it's a very intimate experience. Normally there's 15, 20 people tops in a space, in a living room or a kitchen or a backyard if the weather permits or whatnot. So the level of intimacy is much increased, which does a couple of interesting things. One, by the time you leave that person's home, that you've already dove deep into the rapport building process, just by the very nature of the experience for people.
Yeah.
Obviously, you collect their information and get them into your email list so you can continue that relationship, but they're already a few steps up the staircase already by the time that happens. Another thing that I find interesting is also related to the fact that it is such an intimate experience, is it's very uncommon that a person will leave the house concert without contributing in some fashion. And it's a weird phenomenon that I know I was speaking about with Carol. She was noticing. She does a lot of busking in the summer weather. We're in Ontario, Canada, so weather permitting, right? Yeah. And as we're out busking, people will walk by, et cetera, et cetera. But if there ever comes a point in time where 2, 3, 4 people have paused at the same time and someone drops a little something in the guitar case, there's almost like an unspoken social pressure that takes place. Like, you don't want to be the one, who, thanks for the free show, I'm out, And if one person drops a coin in the bucket, most of the time, everyone else who's standing there will do the same. And you get a little bit of this type of thing happening in a house concert environment as well. Someone will drop a little something in the donation bin, or someone will come and buy your CD or whatnot, and it just sort of triggers a bit of a chain reaction. So the potential for selling your products is vastly improved than when you're at a bar where the people aren't there to see you.
Yeah.
They're there to hang out and socialize, and hopefully they like you as well, but that isn't really the focus of their evening, whereas it is at a house concert.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to consider. There's a woman named Shannon Curtis who wrote a great book called No Booker, No Bartender, No Bouncer, all about house concerts. The subtitle is How I Made 25 Grand in a 8-week house concert tour.
Cool.
And how you can too, I believe, is how it finishes.
Yeah, it's common. I mean, so really, yeah, you're getting down to merch and just having something, if people want to be able to give back, then it's nice to be able to offer them a little memento that they can take away with them when they do give back. It gives them an easy excuse for wanting to support you. And so you can have CDs, you can have T-shirts, or you can hand make T-shirts, and then it makes them even more personal. You can go to like Old Navy that has some cool T-shirts that are in a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different sizes. And then somehow I've got a print, actually, the logo for SOS Studio was carved by an artist out of a wood block.
Okay.
And he did that so that I can roll ink on it. I can press it onto a shirt, and then I peel it off, and the ink stays, the logo stays on the T-shirt, and I can buy a shirt at Old Navy for like $7 and then sell it for 20, and without putting any extra effort into it, without having to hire anyone else. And it's more personal that way, because no two shirts are ever the same. They're always a little bit different.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then Carol just brought up also to try to collect emails from people even when you're in your meet space.
Absolutely.
And one way to do that, so I wanted to bring this up before, a great resource for, I like MailChimp. There are so many out there, but MailChimp is a great newsletter source. You can get up to 2,000 subscribers for completely free.
Hmm.
And then after that, it's comparable prices in order to get a monthly subscription if you go over that. I've got other services that I will say. There's one called MailPoet,
Okay.
that's a WordPress plugin. But if all those words flew over your head, don't worry about it. I just go to MailChimp. That's one of the biggest and the best.
Yeah.
And they have an app that you can have on your iPad. And whenever people come up and talk to you, you can say, hey, I'll trade you a download card for your email address. And you just have a stack of download cards there. You hand one off to them, they type it into their iPad, and you just made this great little transaction. They get a 5-song EP, for free. They get a little personal interaction in MeetSpace, and you get their email address, and you can reach out to them at any time.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we use Aweber, which is very similar to MailChimp.
Yep.
And again, there is an app for your smartphone or your tablet that you can have on you, and to bring that with you. And I know it's something Carol and I oftentimes forget, because you get sometimes at a gig, you get so into the performance and the interaction with people and whatnot. It's like you leave, and at the end of the night, it's like, we should have got those emails.
And one of the perfect things about Aweber so now we can get into like a little bit about funneling talk. So the idea of again, casting a larger net. And bringing them into a specific place, like wanting to show your audience a specific product or factoid or whatever it is, like funneling them down from focus.
Yes.
And so Aweber allows for automated emailing.
Yes, and I was going to ask you about that, because when years ago, I started with MailChimp, and they included an autoresponder, which we'll explain more in detail in a second, in their free plan. And I don't believe they do anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not free anymore. You have to. So, I mean, but Aweber doesn't start off free either. So
it doesn't start off free at all. No,
so once you get into the wanting to get automated emails, they're actually similarly priced.
Yes, okay.
But MailChimp offers the free version to start off with if automated emails isn't necessarily what you're concerned about right now.
And it gives you the opportunity to begin growing your email list even before you're ready to invest in having this sales funnel, which we're about to get into.
Exactly. And at any time, you can transfer, you're not locked into any of these newsletter providers. They might like to think that, tell you that you are, but you can, all it is a list of email addresses. That's
exactly,
that's all it is. And then they're giving you tools of ways to reach out to those email addresses. So at any time you can export them as a spreadsheet and import them into any other service, and you'll be able to keep going. You'll just have to change all of your design elements back to what you want it to be for your brand.
That's right.
But yeah, so as far as funneling, like the automated stuff comes in really, really helpful by, I'll just give an example with SOS Studio. As soon as someone subscribes, no, I'll take that back. As soon as someone becomes a member, as soon as someone says, yes, I want to take your 4-week trial and see what you have going on in the background. I want to distribute my music to iTunes. I want to engage in the forums. And as soon as someone signs up as a member, I have an automated email that goes out about an hour later that's very personal. It's very, I was writing it as me, as just an email, except I copied it now into the system that now, as soon as you join, it sends it out to each individual person, and it says like, hey, I'm Jordan. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really curious how, what are the challenges in your career right now? What are you struggling with? And how can I maybe help with that? And it does a couple things. It just opens it up to a human conversation, and you get to learn what people are struggling with. And that gives you more information about your audience. It gives you more ideas for blog topics. It gives you more ideas for products that you can come up with at a later time. If everyone's saying, hey, I have no idea how to build a newsletter, then all of a sudden I say, oh, great. Well, I can put together a quick video and I can show you,
That's right, and most importantly, in my opinion, it turns the conversation two-way.
Yeah,
I love those kinds of emails, and I like to use that type of call to action in a lot of my emails, because as soon as a person replies to an email that's sent out, and once I respond back, and there's been those couple of touch points, I notice a perceivable change in the quality of that particular relationship.
Yeah.
And being able to set that up in an automated fashion that happens without you having to remember or think about it, all you have to do is react to what happens, what comes back into your inbox. I think is a wonderful thing.
At that point, it's a huge time saver when you've already got a dozen other plates. However, I will also go back on myself a little bit and say that that's what happens when people subscribe, or when people become members of SOS Studio, right? That's very specific. But if they just are subscribing to my newsletter, which contains blog posts and podcast episodes, if they're just doing that, I always make sure to send a personal response to each of those. I get a little notification that says, hey, this email address has just subscribed. And I was doing the automated thing for a while, but it felt too impersonal. If someone's coming to me as a member, I already feel like there's a little bit more of an understanding there, because they've probably watched my videos explaining the service. They've probably made a decision that they like me as a person, or like what I'm trying to do as a person. And so I've afforded the luxury of being like, okay, cool, here's an automated email for you. But for other people who are just discovering me on Google, who are just finding me because someone recommended it or whatever, I make sure to send a personal email to those. And that gives me the opportunity to say, hey, zany1213 Russia at ymail.com. What the heck does that mean? It gives me the opportunity to like actually reference who they are as a person, and to bring it down a little bit and say, I'm really here. I really want to engage with you. I really want to help with you. And I still ask the same question. I still say, what are you struggling with and how can I help? But I have the opportunity then to really get into like the personal.
That's right, which is far more powerful.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, less scalable. So you do that while you're able to.
Yeah.
If you had 200 opt-ins a day into your newsletter,
there goes your day.
Then you're going to want to automate that or change your approach in general.
Right.
And I think that's really what this sales funnel, we've mentioned the phrase a couple of times, but essentially all we're talking about here is having a sequence of emails that you've written that are strategically designed to draw somebody into, or to draw someone's attention to the things you want their attention drawn to, and that is allows you to do this in such a way that can scale.
Right.
Like you said, if one person a day joins your email list, then it takes nothing but a few minutes of time to respond to them and to start a communication, a connection.
Right.
But if as that begins to grow, and that could happen at any time. Sometimes you put something on YouTube and it goes viral, and boom, all of a sudden there's a bunch of people paying attention to you, and you're not going to be able. And so you want to have these things at the very least set up,
right,
so that you can take full advantage of any opportunities in terms of traffic that come your way.
And here's a quick, just really off the top of my head example of like a quick funnel that someone could put together for, if they had automated emails in place, a quick funnel that you can do for as a musician. So you could send out an automated email, say, hey, I'm Jordan, it's so nice to meet you. What kind of music do you like? And then they write back. And then you're like, and then you can still engage with that. But then a couple days later, the second automated email comes out that says, hey, I really wanted to share some of my music with you. Here's 3 free songs. Here's the link to go download it. And you just have it on a private SoundCloud account or something, or a private Bandcamp profile. And you send them over to that. They get to download it. They get to listen to it and enjoy it. No holds barred. It's theirs. And then a couple days later, you send out another automated email saying, hey, what'd you think about the music? I hope you had a chance to download it. And then a couple days later, and then you say, I'm about to start this new album. Would you be able to help me? That's not a perfect scenario. That feels kind of.
I understand what you're getting at, though. See, it's always a little trickier as an artist, because your goal is not necessarily to lead to a sale.
Right.
Your goal is to deepen the relationship, and so in my opinion, the autoresponder sequence that I would want to put together is one that is going to draw someone deeper and deeper into my world as an artist, and to offer as much value as I possibly can. And then at some point deeper into that sequence, I will have things. I will present opportunities, as we discussed earlier, for them to show support should they choose to, as opposed to a sales pitch. I believe that it's a really different approach than you would have if you sold purple widgets or whatnot.
Right. There's a guru that lots of people listen to and follow. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk. Just brilliant mind, and he's got a book called Jab 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 Right Hook.
Right hook. Yeah.
And basically what that translates to is give, ask. And he's like, add value, add value, add value, add value, add value, add value, and then at a certain point say, do you think you could help out a little bit? And if you've given enough value, if you've given away just all of this stuff that you should and could be charging for, if you're just giving away, and sometimes that's just your personal time. Sometimes it's just like, I want to, like you're saying, expand that relationship. If you keep doing that, then at a certain point, it's going to make it a lot easier for the person on the other end of the line to say, yes, I would love to support you.
Yeah, it's referred to as reciprocation. We can go deeper into the psychology of influence in another conversation. I want to be respectful of your time because I know you got a busy schedule. Sure. But I just want to recap a little bit. So basically, the topic of conversation has been, shifting into the business mindset and how do we proceed from there. We talked a little bit about the actual mindset differences. We talked a little bit about how to find people who might be interested in what you have to do and collect them. And the reason for this being that you want to have the opportunity to, over time, deepen the relationship and build a rapport with as many people as possible, because as an artist, that's actually how you end up making sales and having contributions into your business. It's from people who really love and support what you're trying to do. And so we use tools like our newsletter and our website via the blog to provide as much value and to deepen the connection with as many people as we can. And we use the concept of a sales funnel, quote unquote, even though I don't like the term sales funnel when applied to this application, because it's really a way of simply automating for the purpose of being able to scale the types of communications you're having with people. Stuff you want to make sure every single person who enters into your world has an opportunity to experience or to read or to watch as a video or what have you.
Yeah.
And I think that those are some good sort of broad overview perspectives on the core components to really beginning to grow a bit of a business as an artist. What do you think about that?
I love it, man. I think it's really strong, and it's frankly, it's pretty overwhelming. I mean, there's so many things that you have to consider, but take what resonates with you right now, dear listener, and and start with that, because that's what you're going to get the most out of right now. Whatever we just talked about, if there's one thing is like, oh, I would love to start that, or just don't start with the most daunting thing. Stick with the one that is exciting to you, and you're going to get great results from that.
Absolutely. And just to add to that is experiment with this model with just a single person.
Yeah.
If somebody clicks like on something you posted on Facebook, reach out to that person, start a dialogue, build a rapport, et cetera. Just like execute this concept with just one single person and see the results. See how that person then begins to interact with you and your content as time goes forward.
Yeah, cool.
And you'll probably see that it works. And then all you have to do is figure out, now, how do I do this on a mass scale, on a much bigger scale?
Right. Hopefully a much bigger scale.
Hopefully a much bigger scale.
Fingers crossed.
Jordan, I appreciate you taking the time to chit chat with me and the TechMuze audience today. And we didn't get into our Walking Dead chit chat, but like I say, maybe we'll save that for another conversation. But all I can say is your character's still kicking, right?
As of right now, we have seen through half of season 6, and as of right now, oh man, I can't even say anything because like that, even someone who's not caught up on season 6, this is ridiculous, man. So yeah, hey, the show's doing great.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll ask a very benign question. Okay. When does the second half of season 6 air? Start
mid-February. I want to say right around Valentine's Day, February 14th or 17th. I want to say 17th, something like that.
All right. Well, I eagerly await.
Cool, man. Yeah.
All right, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Dezz.
Thanks for taking the time, and we will talk again soon.
All right, dude. Ciao.
Take care.